about the silver fox again. I know, well, it's not just about the silver fox. We're going to talk about a few things. This is about wild versus feral, domestic versus tame, native versus invasive, and why words matter. So this is going to be, yeah, for some strange science here. We're going to talk about why and how we classify things the way we do. It's just a little blog someone wrote, and I liked it. It's called "Is the Fox Cute?" Recently, a post crossed my dash on Facebook featuring a small group of llamas in the forest of the Olympic Peninsula. The caption described them as wild llamas, llama glama, that may seem pretty innocuous to the average person, but to a naturalist, it's a gross mischaracterization. For one thing, llamas are completely domestic animals, no more wild than a cow or a dog. They are descendant from the guanaco, the llama guanaco, which is a truly wild camelid. So this means that the llamas on the peninsula are feral, not wild. But why does this distinction of wild and feral matter so much? Let's find out. The terms we use to describe various species help us to understand their origins and, perhaps more importantly, their current ecological status, or as Andrew Tate would say, status. Sorry, that guy annoys me. These concepts aren't just relevant to scientists, however. Every day, people are constantly making decisions that can affect the ecosystem around them. And often these decisions are made without having a full understanding of their impact. For example, look at how many people release unwanted pets into the wild, whether domesticated rabbits, goldfish, snakes, or other more exotic animals. Some of these unfortunate animals end up dying pretty awful deaths due to starvation, exposure, and predation, but others manage to survive and reproduce, becoming the latest population of a non-native, potentially invasive species in their ecosystem. This wouldn't happen if more people understood the impact of non-native species and how releasing captive animals puts native species at risk. But it all starts with knowing that there's a difference, understanding the terms that explain why that difference exists. So let's explore some vocabulary that can be used to describe species, whether animals, plants, or otherwise. Let's start with domestication. Because there often seems to be confusion as to what makes a species domesticated. Domestication is a process that takes many years, often measured in centuries. Humans breed chosen animals for particular traits over the number of generations. As time passes, each subsequent generation becomes more different from the wild species it originated from, and eventually a new, fully domesticated species emerges from this process of artificial selection by humans. Dogs, Canis familiaris or Canis lupus familiaris, are the first animals humans domesticated, in a process that started around 30,000 years ago. The evolution from the now extinct Pleistocene wolf, a particular lineage of gray wolf, Canis lupus, and it's likely that the parent partnership began as some wolves showed less fear of humans while scavenging from our kills. By 14,000 years ago, dogs were a distinct species or subspecies from wolves. And we do talk about speciation and domestication on Michael Granado's stream in November. So it's been a couple months ago, but if you didn't watch it, go check that out. It was a good conversation. All right, where was I? Dogs display very different characteristics from wolves. Their faces tend to be shorter with a more pronounced stop, the bump in the forehead where the muzzle meets the rest of the skull. Floppy ears and curled tails are common, as are patchy colored coats. Dogs tend to have weaker muscles than wolves of similar size, shorter legs and smaller feet, smaller teeth, and smaller size overall. This is a phenomenon known as neoteny, in which a domestic animals have a tendency to retain more juvenile physical traits of their parents' wild species, and you can see it from the domestication of animals across the board. But it's not just physical appearance that matter. Behaviorally, dogs are generally more friendly towards humans. In fact, they've even developed some human-friendly body language that wolves don't have, like puppy dog eyes. They have been easily trained, and unless poorly socialized, dogs generally enjoy the company of humans. In many ways, physically and behaviorally, a dog is a wolf that never grew out of its puppy stage. While a young wolf pup may be able to live in someone's house for a short time, as they grow older, they become more destructive and less tolerant of human company. Your dog may love watching out the window during a car ride, but a wolf is going to be much more stressed out by the experience. Even wolf dog hybrids have to be treated differently than your average domesticated dog because the wolf content has a significant effect on behavior. This is just one example of how domestication isn't a matter of a few generations of selective breeding. You can also compare domesticated horses, Equus feral cabalis, with Przewalski's horse. I hate trying to say that because I feel like I always say it wrong. Or zebras, subgenus Hippotigris. Domesticated cows, Bos taurus, with stories of fierce wild aurochs, and so forth. In every case, the wild and domesticated counterparts are very different in both appearance and behavior. Now, what about the term tame? Wild animal species have been tamed over the years, either wild-caught individuals or those born in captivity. These tame animals may be more docile in comparison to a fully wild counterpart, but this generally takes a lot of handling and socialization from a young age. However, tame animals retain a lot of wild behaviors than domesticated ones. Take the supposed domesticated foxes that people want to have as pets. Most of the foxes available as pets have no relation to those in the famous Russian fox domestication experiment, but are from modern fur farm lines. And in fact, the studied foxes came from Russian fur farms, so the researchers were beginning with pre-tamed animals rather than truly wild ones. While some tamed foxes may be more amenable to human handling than wild foxes, they are by no means domesticated. They are more prone to wild behavior, like urinating everywhere to mark territory, chewing on anything they can to get their jaw on, if they can get their jaw on, nipping and making a lot of noise. Moreover, whereas domestic dogs adapted to eat an omnivorous diet after a few millennia of eating alongside us, foxes need a more specialized diet than what you can get at a pet store. Unfortunately, there are unscrupulous people within the exotic pet trade who will advertise their tame, at best, stock of domesticated foxes. This often leads consumers to thinking they're getting a much more trackable animal that will be as easy to care for as a cat or dog, and sets up everyone involved for disaster, except, of course, the seller with a fatter wallet. Next, let's compare wild versus feral. A wild species is one that has never been domesticated, nor have its ancestors. Generally, it will be a native species to its ecosystem. though non-native species can become introduced to an ecosystem without having been domesticated. A feral animal, on the other hand, is a member of a domesticated species that has escaped or been released back into the wild and has survived to reproduce new generations that have never been handled by humans. I've often heard people refer to feral swine, Sus domesticus, that have ravaged ecosystems worldwide as wild pigs. They may behave in a wild manner, and they certainly look rougher and hairier than the average well-fed domesticated pig on a farm. It's not uncommon for feral animals to regain some traits of their wild ancestors. However, that does not make them truly wild. If you manage to wrest away a litter of newborn piglets from a feral sow and bottle feed them, they will likely be more able to be socialized and kept in captivity, though they may still physically resemble feral pigs. They haven't lost the deeply ingrained genes that carry domesticated traits. However, if you try to raise a newborn Eurasian wild boar, Sus scrofa, or a Red River hog, Potamochirus porcus, it will lack the domesticated traits of its farm cousins and show more wild traits as it ages, making it rather unsuitable for pets or farm animals. We also see that the return of the domestic traits in Mustangs and other feral horses captured at a young age, while Mustangs born in the wild may be tougher to work with at first than a full born in captivity and handled from birth. The Mustang will be much more calm and easy to train than, say, a zebra. The problem with referring to a feral animal as wild is that this suggests that they are natural and part of the ecosystem that they are in, because a truly domesticated species or subspecies is not the same as the parent species and has no place in which it is native as an animal wild. So no domestic species is wild. Let's stress that again so everybody understands. A native species is one that has evolved in a given ecosystem for thousands or even millions of years. In the process, it has developed numerous intricate interrelationships with many other species that are in its ecosystem, creating a careful system of checks and balances. A non-native species is a species that has been taken out of the ecosystem in which it evolved and placed in a different ecosystem where it is not normally found, and by extension the system of check and balances is not in place for it and has to shake things up a bit, problematic as that may be. For example, here in North America, the mourning dove, Zendaya macrura, is a wild native species. While it may resemble domesticated pigeons, it has never been domesticated, even when kept in captivity. The Eurasian collared dove, Streptopelia decato, on the other hand, was introduced to the Americas after a few dozen individuals were released in the Bahamas in 1974. The feral pigeon, Columbia livia domestica, is a domesticated species derived from the rock dove. Columba livia. Someone was saying that when I say dove, it sounds like I'm saying dub, like dubstep. Where was I? Which is native to Europe, West Asia, and North Africa, but both the collared dove and the pigeon are examples of non-native species. Most non-native species do not offer any benefit to the ecosystem they are introduced to because they do not have established relationship with the native species. When they compete with native species for resources, they weaken the ecosystem overall. So yeah, that's why you don't want to release domesticated species into the wild, especially or non-native species into an area where they're not known. Non-native species can be further categorized as naturalized or invasive, or even both. A naturalized species is a non-native one that has managed to establish reproducing populations rather than going extinct without becoming established. Unfortunately, some people take this to mean that the species has become fully integrated into the new ecosystem. However, this is a process that again takes thousands to millions of years as the species adapts to the newcomer, which itself often also changes as it adapts to the new environment. So I question this when it comes to bees, though, because domesticated honeybees have definitely supplanted the wild native bees in North America, basically to the point of extinction right now. I mean, they're like on the verge of extinction. And so now if you take out the naturalized invasive European honeybees from the environment would collapse. The ecology would collapse. So I don't know if I agree with this blogger here about that part of it, because I do think that a species can become, not necessarily that it's healthy that it did, but it can become naturalized. Yes, hydrate. I'm on it. Thank you. Anyway, where was I? Ring-necked pheasants. Okay. I feed the sweat bees. They love Bruce Lane. Yeah. I try to do my part, plant native flowers and stuff, but anyway. Ring-necked pheasants. Facianus. I'm going to say Facianus colcicus, maybe? I'm trying, guys. Are an example of naturalized species in North America, native to Asia and parts of Europe. They were introduced here as a game bird 250 years ago, while captive pheasants are regularly released into the wild to offer more hunting opportunities to humans. This species has been naturalized from its first introduction. Again, naturalized doesn't mean natural. Pheasants compete with native birds like northern bobwhites and prairie chickens. Not only do they compete for food, nesting sites, and other resources, they also spread diseases to native birds. Pheasants even engage in brooding parasitism, laying their eggs in native bird nests and sometimes causing the native birds to abandon the nest and their own young entirely. This means that pheasants are also invasive as well as naturalized. Invasive species are non-native that aggressively compete with and sometimes displace or extirpate native species. Okay, so here we're getting into it. So I take back my disagreement previously. We're going to cover it here, I think, including both native species. There are several hundred species that have become seriously invasive here, including both vertebrates and invertebrate animals and numerous plants. But even the rest of the over 6,000 non-native species that have become naturalized here put pressure on native species that have the potential to become invasive if their impact increases to a more damaging point. Hopefully this gives you a clear understanding of what the terms mean and why it's important to know the difference. By knowing a little more about how your local ecosystem works and how different species may be contributing to or detracting from the overall health, you may have more power to be able to make decisions that can preserve native species and help ecosystems to be more resilient, given the removal of invasive species. In one of the most important ways we can help the ecosystem thrive in spite of climate change. It's more important than ever that we increase nature literacy among general populace. Consider the article just one small way to move the effort along. All right. This was just posted yesterday too. It just popped in my feed and I'm like, oh, I got to talk about that. So yeah, that was a good article, I think. I liked it. I liked how it broke everything down and explained it to us. I hope that you all were able to learn a little bit about ecology. But it's been a pleasant morning. It is now 20 afternoon, and I am ready to go grab a bite to eat. So I'm going to end the stream here and tell everybody to be kind and take care.